Smile.
But I'm not happy.
People
Why are you
staring.
I don't want to do this.
You have to. They'll know
No one
something's
cares about
wrong.
your
Why
life.
is that bad?
Nobody cares. They won't understand.
Nobody
I want to
cares.
go home. You'll hurt their feelings.
This is ridiculous.
What are we even talking about?
Just
You want to
keep
keep
them
them
happy.
happy.
What if they
They're
think
gonna
you're
be mean.
stupid?
Just
Just
keep them happy. Just keep them happy.
Just lie.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.
Hi, welcome back to Real Honest, the podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting in the workplace, and everything in between. I am your host. My name is Samantha, and you probably won't always like me, but I will always be honest with you. I feel like we all have something, or in some cases, someone that we feel like we need in order to be okay, to be happy, to be successful, to be productive, to classify ourselves of having made it, or at least making it and on our way. And so this is kind of expanding upon last week's episode, but I want to reflect today on why I feel like I'm learning that true peace will never come from getting what you want, but in learning how to let go and figuring out how to really be present on the journey. Quick goals check-in. So I've mentioned before that for my physical planner that I use Passion Planner, and I love it so much. And since it's the end of June, beginning of July, it's the point in the Passion Planner has a mid-year check-in where basically it's the reflection questions that I read you guys last week. It has you do those at the end of every month. And then at every 6 months, you do, I think it's called a mind map. I don't actually know. It's not a flow chart. I'm trying to think of the easiest way to explain this. But essentially, the planner lays out for you how to do it. And it says, like, give yourself a timer, like 5 minutes or something. And you just sit down and you write down anything that you could dream, anything you could imagine, like any hope, any desires, just write it all down as much as comes to mind in whatever time limit you set. And there are different, the page is kind of split into like things that you would like to accomplish in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, in your entire lifetime. And so you write down like in the center of the page, like the date of today. And then so maybe like the bottom left will be in 3 months and the bottom right will be in 6 months and the top left will be in a year and the top right will be in your lifetime potentially. And you kind of make all of these different lists. And then after the time is up, you go back and you focus on like, okay, what of the things that I wrote down, like how can I break any of these things into like tangible steps and actions, and like what would change my life the most if I focused on that one thing and the tangible steps to get there today. If you are like me, this process is pretty overwhelming, which is why I'm glad that there is a time limit. I think I usually give myself 2 minutes instead of 5 because I have way too many things that I want to do in a lifetime. And so it's helpful to like put a time limit on, like a cap on how much I can write down and what I should really focus on. But I think to make this applicable to the topic today, the purpose is not the goal setting in itself. The purpose is, for me, like I have to have some type of direction, understanding that like it's kind of I was gonna say it's a joke in the Christian community, but I don't know if this is specific to Christians. But one of my mom's favorite quotes is "Life happens to your plans." Like if you want to like see God's humor, make a plan, and then he'll be like, "LOL, that's not what you're doing." But I still think that it's important to make plans because, at least for me, I need to have some type of direction. I need to be working toward something. And I think part of the struggle of my life has been learning that the point is not for me to necessarily complete every plan that I make, but it's more that I have a plan, I have a direction, and then when God adjusts me, I am okay and comfortable with pivoting and making a new plan or following something else. I actually hate the process of writing out all of my dreams and goals because there are so many and it's so overwhelming, but I do like the process of nailing down, okay, you see that you've got these million things that you want to do. How many of these can realistically be worked toward in the next 3 months? And then nail that down to, okay, what's the first step that you're going to take to focus on for the next month, and then break that down into a week, and then break that down into a day of like, this is the specific thing that you're going to do. And like, just for an example that I feel like would be applicable to a lot of people, like if you want to lose a certain number of pounds in a year, right? And then break that down to, okay, so if this is the number for the year, what's the number that needs to happen each month for me to get there in a year? And then break that down into weekly, and then like, okay, how do I get started today? Do I currently have a gym membership or a workout plan or a nutritionist, or like, looking at my current habits, like what is something that I can adjust or change today to get started? And then how do I duplicate that each day to get me closer to my goal? But the piece of this process that I really want to focus on today is still having peace if you don't get there. And this can be like at the end of the year, you look back and you're like, I didn't do the thing that I wanted to do this year. Or maybe you got closer, or maybe you got further away because you focus on other things. But whatever it is, being able to not sit in the despair and beating yourself up of like, oh my gosh, I set this goal and I didn't achieve it. But being able to be like, okay, well, you set this goal, you didn't achieve it. So you did something else with your time. What else did you do with your time? What did you achieve? And did you enjoy that? And are you happy with that use of your time? And if not, then what can you do differently to adjust your time moving forward? For me, I have broken my book down into 15 beats that I want to cover from start to finish. And then those beats are split into the 3 acts. Beats 1 through 5 happen in Act 1. And so the goal that I set for myself was to complete Act 1 by the end of June. I did complete beats 1 through 4. I didn't get to 5. And I was really upset about it and like hating myself and beating myself up. But then I was like, this is a new process for me. I've never written this way. And I don't have any historical data to be able to tell myself like how many pages or how many words a certain beat should be. So like I know that Act 2 is the longest and Acts 3 and 1 are shorter. So I knew that I would need more time to write Act 2, but I don't really have the data to be able to gauge how much time I need to write Act 1. So I'm looking at the progress that I did make. I'm like, I got to about 90% of where I wanted to go to. And I looked back at how much time I spent writing this month, around about how many words and scenes I wrote per writing session, how often I wrote, to be able to now sit down for July and say, okay, let me map this out a little better so I can get more strategic with it and come up with a more realistic and attainable writing goal for the end of July. In this goal setting process, I feel like what God is teaching me is that it's so easy to equate peace with everything going your way. And I feel like this is something that the church at large could do a better job explaining to people. Again, like I'm not going to blame any specific pastor or church, because a lot of this is also on me and the way that I interpret things that have been said to me. But I feel like growing up, I heard my mom and other people at church reference like the joy of the Lord and the peace of the Lord, of like, you need a relationship with Jesus because you're going to experience this supernatural peace and this supernatural joy. And I was like, well, hey, I like joy. I like peace. Like I want that. But I think to a kid and a teenager, what does that mean? When somebody says you're going to experience supernatural joy and peace, I imagine, I don't know, maybe frolicking through a field, like just being really excited, maybe a montage of highlights in life, like having a best friend, graduating, getting married, getting a new job, like things that I'm just really excited about happening all the time. And I don't think that that is really what the church was trying to communicate. In my personal experience going on this journey and like reading scripture as often as I can and learning as much as I can about God and like knowing who he is and really getting to know him, I feel like the supernatural peace and joy of the Lord is peace in the midst of deep turmoil. It's like losing your job, but not freaking out about it and just trusting that God's going to take care of it and there's going to be something else. And like, maybe you'll have to sell your house. Maybe you'll have to move. Maybe you'll have to live on someone's couch for a bit. Like maybe you're going to be in a really uncomfortable, tight situation, but you're still going to have, like, you're not going to be panicked and overwhelmed by it. You're going to wake up each day and be like, what is in front of me? What can I do? It's like getting broken up with, and instead of laying on the floor crying for days or weeks or months, hopefully not years, but instead of doing that, you're able to reflect on it from a point of view of, all right, that person wasn't for me. And that doesn't mean that that relationship was not meaningful. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to reflect on it, I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to keep going with my life. Like, it's not going to end me, it's not going to destroy me, and not being defined by any of these negative things that happen to you, but just really being able to sit back and say, okay, that happened. Let me look at what I can learn from it, and let me keep going. I definitely felt like I was going to lay down and die when my last boyfriend told me that he was secretly married with 3 children. It was very traumatic, and at the time, I did not have a good relationship with Jesus, and I did not have strong faith, and I just felt like God had let this terrible thing happen to me, and like I was really stupid, and how could I not know this, and how did I let this happen to me? How am I so dumb? And I just, looking back on that time, I have so much grace for my 20-something-year-old self, because I'm like, you did the best that you could with the information that you had, but also that man was my entire world. And as soon as he was no longer my future, I felt like I didn't have one. And so I feel like now, on the other side of it, the way that I would describe the peace of the Lord is like, if I were to get into a relationship again, and it doesn't have to be romantic, like it can be a friendship, it can be a familial relationship, like maybe if you have like a falling out with a sister or a parent or whatever, like that does not have to be what the relationship is forever, and whatever happens in the relationship doesn't have to define me. Like I can still just pause and breathe and say, okay, it happened, we're continuing on with life. So that's the topic today, is that happiness isn't circumstantial. It's not a destination. The job, the relationship, getting an apology, getting a certain breakthrough, getting closure, it might feel necessary, but it's not the source of your happiness. It's not the source of your peace. It's not about a person or a thing. It's about a mindset. I feel like when I look back at my darkest seasons of depression, like the very first time, I was 13, and I think it was triggered by like different issues going on with my family and also issues going on with friends. And I believed that once my family was closer and more comforting to one another and emotionally available, and once I had these super close friends and we guaranteed each other that we were going to be besties for life, then I was going to be happy. And then I think anytime that I was sad later in high school and like all through college, it really stemmed from this belief that like, when I get married, I'm going to be happy. When I move to LA and become an actor or a screenwriter and I'm like full-time working in entertainment, I will have made it and I will be happy. Like I just have to get there and then everything's going to be okay. But all of that was just a lie. When I insert XYZ, when I'm debt free, when that person texts me back, when I get that job, when I live in that place, when I call this person, I will feel XYZ. Like that is just how we delay our peace. Because if happiness is always out there in the future, how are we ever going to actually achieve it? How are we ever going to actually live in it? We cannot control our outcomes, our timelines, or other people's choices. And that's a big part of why when I do my monthly goal setting now, I try to really focus in on things that don't require other people to want them. Like when I was a teenager, getting married was a huge goal of mine. But, getting married requires a man to want to marry me and for me to also want to marry him. There are so many other factors there, right? Where like writing a book is something that I don't need help with. I can totally do that on my own. I can make that happen. And so I don't want to be working toward goals that like require another person, another thing that I don't have, because that's another way to just delay my peace even further. What we can control is our inner world, our habits, our boundaries. I cannot control the fact that my mom grew up in a generation that feels like therapy means you are broken and there's something wrong with you. So every time that I suggest to my mother that she go to therapy because my sisters and I find it so helpful for themselves, and she gets upset with me because she feels like I'm telling her that there's something wrong with her that needs to be fixed, I can't control what's going on in her heart and her mind when she hears that. I can't control her reaction to my suggestion, but I can control the language that I use when I suggest it to her. I can control whether or not I suggest it to her. And I can control my own boundaries where I can say like, hey, I would love to be able to talk about these certain topics with you, but I really think that you need to go to therapy for us to discuss it effectively. So I respect your choice to not go to therapy, but because of that, I'm going to keep the following topics off limits because it always gets very out of control with the two of us and it's harming our relationship. So for the betterment of you and I to continue as mother and daughter in a positive direction, we can't talk about these things because of decisions that you and I have both made. All right, so practically, how do we do this? Ways that I personally have started to create peace internally. Prayer works for me. I don't pray as often as I would like to be honest. I still feel weird, like with the whole idea of, I shouldn't say the idea, more the practice of prayer, where I really struggle with what is the point in praying if God already knows what I want and what I need, and if God's already decided what's going to happen, then what is the point? And I do understand that it's more for me than it is for God. Like prayer to me is about changing my heart. It's about helping me see and understand things. So if I'm asking God for something and the answer is no or not yet, it's learning how I can better respond to that to adjust my own behavior. So I have found journaling to be really helpful. Like when I was younger, I think I did like Dear Diary, and now like my journals basically are my prayers. Like I journal to God all of my thoughts and my feelings, my questions, my anxieties. It's really less about asking for things. Like I don't pray / journal a whole lot in like, hey God, I really want this job, or like, I really want this friend, or I really want this boyfriend. Like it's more about, I really want to understand this about this person. I really want to understand this emotion. I really want to be kinder. I want to be a better human. And that I just found has been more effective for my personal prayer life. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I think also setting boundaries has been a huge one, and being able to communicate those boundaries to your friends and family. I have found that boundaries are much easier to set with my friends who have also been to therapy because they understand what it is and what's happening. Whereas like if you're talking to someone from an older generation that's refusing to go to therapy, then they're usually going to feel personally offended by any boundaries that you set. And that's just kind of an extra layer of things that you have to deal with. But the other thing that I have found really helpful in just choosing and finding peace is walking away from toxic hope. And I, just that hope of this, if I just keep trying, it's going to happen. And I don't want anyone to hear this and feel like I'm saying like, stop working on the thing, or like, if it's not happening, it's not for you. Cause a lot of times like you do have to, like people pray for things for years of their life before they see it come to fruition. So I'm not talking about that, but I think it's more in the situationships where the guy's very clearly like, I don't want to be with you. And you're like, but you you're saying you don't want to be with me, but your actions are telling me you want to be with me. Just listen to the man. He doesn't want to be with you. Like, we don't need to do this. Like, well, if I just stay in his life a little longer, like if I just keep doing what I'm doing, eventually he will love me back. No, he won't. Just walk away. And if the two of you are meant to be, then he will return to your life at a time and a place where it works for the both of you, and you're not constantly in this anxious space feeling and questioning whether or not you're enough. You're going to know that you're enough right off the bat, and it's going to work out just fine. This is a horrible week to start promoting the podcast, because if I get any new listeners, they're going to be like, wow, this girl has only had really terrible toxic relationships, and clearly she has awful taste in men. But for those of you who know me, those of you that are my friends and have been listening for a while, I'm using this example just because it's relevant to what I'm talking about. But so I do have, if you were listening, the summer, whatever summer it was that I was like hopelessly in love with my best friend and wrote him a whole EP and debuted half the songs on here. It was a very entertaining time for me, but it was also very distressing because I was totally in the toxic hope situation where I was like, he's totally going to love me back. Like, he already does love me back. He just doesn't realize it yet. And if I just stick around for like a handful more days or years, like, he's going to wake up one day and figure it out. Like, don't even worry. And it was absolutely chaotic and insane. Fully aware of it. However, okay, we like stopped speaking for a while and then like came back together as friends, had a conversation about everything that had happened, moved on. And he remains one of my closest friends, if not my closest friend, like in this season. And I'm so, so, so grateful to have him. Like I can't even express to you guys like just how much this friendship has like meant to me. And I have so many other friends that don't get it, and they think that I'm still in that like waiting space of like, he's gonna love me again, right? He's gonna love me again, right? And I'm like, okay, but I was saying that before. Am I saying that now? And I'm not. It's not reverse psychology. Like, I think that I am now in a place with my life and my relationships where like I don't need them to turn into something else or to last forever to be effective. Like, I am celebrating the friendships that I have now today for as long as I have them. And if they end tomorrow, that's not going to destroy my life. It's not going to be the end of the world. Like, I'm going to be okay. You know, whenever you see those quotes that are like, if you're feeling really sad or you're like worried about something coming up, just remember you have survived every single one of your worst days, which is so simple, but it is so true, you know? And it's just like, yeah, I have survived a lot of toxic relationships. I have been in love with uncomfortably too many men who have severely harmed me, either physically or emotionally, but I'm still standing. I am still alive. I'm still moving forward, and I know how to notice and address when things are pulling me back to the, I don't know what I guess the space, the spirit, the emotional state that I was in my 20s. Like, I know what that feels like, and I feel if I'm sliding back into that space, and I'm going to exit immediately because I no longer have the time or the energy to put up with that, and I no longer feel like pain has to be involved in order to feel like it's real. I don't know what it is about. Was it the movies and the TV shows that were being made in the 90s and the early 2000s that was like, if you're not in distress, that man doesn't love you? Like, that was just the message that we were all getting. And I was always in distress. So I was like, oh, I'm so loved because I'm hurting so much. Like, get out of here with that nonsense. Moving on to the hard conversation of the week. So speaking of like a toxic hope situation or something where like somebody needs to accept something that maybe they don't want to, I recently went on a trip with a friend where it was our first time meeting in person. And we're part of the same friend group. So we had like multiple conversations in a group setting, but we had very few one-on-one conversations. So I was kind of going into this trip looking at it like, this person is an acquaintance. They're going to remain an acquaintance, whether the trip goes well or goes badly. If the trip goes badly, we don't have like a super close friendship to be ruined here. But if the trip goes well, we can totally develop a closer friendship here and maybe take more trips in the future and see how we do like more one-on-one, or like, do we need to always be in a large group, or just kind of all those things I figured were going to be kind of figured out on the trip. And while we were on the trip, I felt like this person came on the trip feeling like I was one of her very best friends. And so I got super uncomfortable because I was like, oh no, like, how did I mislead her? Like, what did I say or do that like makes her think that we're super close, because I don't feel that way. And I've shared on here before how typically friendships for me goes one of two ways. It's either like I'm the person that's like, oh my gosh, you're so cool, I'm obsessed with you, please be my bestie. And the other person is like, yikes, get away from me. Or it's the opposite. But I very rarely in my adult life have found relationships that are like kind of even give and take and reciprocal in the way that we see each other. So I think it was also that fear of mine kind of manifesting in real time. And I definitely did not handle it well. And I got very angry with her, where I felt like she was being clingy and annoying, and I like could not get away from her fast enough. And I wanted to just like keep taking walks and having alone time so that I could escape, because I felt smothered. And I wasn't in an emotional state on the trip to be able to explain this or have the conversation. And so after the trip, once some time went by and we both had time to like get back home and reflect on it and everything, I did reach out to say like, hey, I just want to talk to you about how I feel about the trip, because we never did like a debrief. And I kind of feel like we should, because I'm kind of feeling like we are in different places in terms of how we view each other and our friendship. And primarily I was worried about leading her on. Like, I didn't want her to see me go on a trip in the future and not invite her and not know why, or like see me kind of pull back and be confused and feel like she did something wrong, because I totally don't think that there was any fault here. I think it was just personality differences. And so I wrote like kind of a long text kind of explaining like how I felt, which again, I shouldn't have done that, but explaining how I felt about everything. And then like it was days before she responded, and she responded with like a meme that was totally unrelated. And so then I panicked and I asked a whole bunch of people, like, if this happened to you, like this person is very clearly telling me they don't want to discuss this, right? Like, do you think it's possible that like she didn't get the message or didn't see it? And most of my friends were like, yeah, it definitely sounds like she doesn't want to talk about it. Like, I would just let it go, leave it alone. But you know, me being me, I can't let anything go or leave anything alone. And so I was like, hey, just want to confirm, are you using this meme to tell me that you don't want to have this conversation with me? Because quite frankly, if she refused to have the conversation, that would have been fine. But I just wanted to not make an assumption and give her the space to officially say that she didn't want to have the conversation. And so she actually called me an hour or so later and was like, hey, so I wasn't refusing to have the conversation with you at all. I thought you were just expressing your thoughts to me, and I read them and I understood them, and I didn't realize that you were then requesting any response from me. And I'm super glad that she said that. I'm super glad that she called me, and I'm super glad that I did not listen to any of the friends that were like, oh, just let it go, she clearly doesn't want to talk about it, because I think that would have made like the group dynamic that we're in be weird, because I would have felt like, okay, she clearly like doesn't like me anymore and doesn't want to be friends and doesn't want to talk to me. Like, all of those like stories that I was writing in my mind, none of them were even true. And I was able to say to her like, oh, okay, thank you for clarifying. I'm so sorry I wasn't clear. I was absolutely looking for a response from you. Essentially, I was sharing with you, here's how I felt about the trip, and here's how I think you felt about the trip. And I was looking for you to tell me, like, am I correct in how you felt, or do you feel differently? Like, here's how I feel about you as a friend, here's how I think that you feel about me. am I correct in that? And we just like talked through it, and we're able to get to a place where we're totally on the same page and like understand where the other one is coming from. And I think that's one of those conversations that like most people don't want to have, and like it could have been really uncomfortable and terrible, but it wasn't, at least from my perspective. I hope she feels the same way. And I think that it made us closer as friends, because now I know that if I have something to address with her, I can take it directly to her. I should have called her, and so I'm glad she called me, and I will call her next time. But you know, if I had let fear win, I would have just assumed how she felt and what she thought, and I would have ran with that as the truth, and I would have been wrong. And that would have stopped me from potentially growing in this friendship. So to wrap up today, I just want to encourage all of you with the hope that there will still be happiness after the relationship, after the job, after whatever the thing is that's happening in life that you have lost, that you may be mourning. Just like the song says, you know, there will be happiness after you, but there was happiness because of you. And just because a certain person or a thing brought joy in the past does not mean that you require them to continue to feel and experience joy in the future. It's totally possible that the happiness and the joy that you experience may not be what you imagined, but it will be truer. It will be more grounded. So my question for you guys today is, what is the one thing that you are waiting on to feel today that you can begin to release your grip on this week? Like, what is something what would you fill in the blank with if you hear somebody say like, once I have, or when I have, fill in the blank, I will feel happy, I will feel peace. What is that thing? And how can you start kind of letting go of that today? Okay, what are you guys watching this week? I want to talk about We Were Liars, brand new on Prime Video. This is one of my absolute favorite shows I have ever seen in my entire life. I loved it so much. I binged the entire thing in one night. I ugly cried the entire last episode. I have not read the book yet. I'm really excited to read the book. I would recommend not reading the book first if you have not already, because it's a pretty big mystery, and I think that knowing how it ends will more dramatically affect your viewing experience than it will your reading experience, because I think that typically books have more space to like dive into like the minds of different characters. So usually you can go deeper and spend more time with each of the characters in each of the scenes. So there's kind of like more to learn and more to unravel when you read a book. Watching the series, I do think I still would have loved it if I knew how it ended, but the fact that I ugly cried the whole last episode was because I had no idea, and I couldn't figure out the mystery, and it just completely blindsided me, and I thought it was so brilliant. I love the team behind this show. So it's Julie Plec and Karina Adley McKenzie. Julie Plec is the creator and showrunner of The Vampire Diaries, the originals and legacies. And Karina Adley McKenzie did some writing on, I think it was the originals, maybe she worked on all three, but she was the showrunner of Roswell, New Mexico. These are all CW shows targeted toward like YA females. So if you haven't heard of them or you haven't watched them and you're not in that demographic, that's probably why. If you are in that demographic and you hate those shows, you might also hate this. It's not in a supernatural realm, if that's the element of it that you don't like, but it's still like YA. I think this is more applicable to male and female audiences. Also, it centers around a family, 3 generations of a family. So you have like the grandparents, the parents, and then the teen children. So I actually do think this would be a really great show to watch with family and just see kind of how different generations react and respond to it. That's another way that's very different from like the other work that these writers and creators have done. But I think that the two of them are so brilliant and that everything they touch turns to gold. So I've been waiting for this show for a very long time, and I thought it was brilliant. I think every actor gave their all, every writer gave their all. The location they filmed at is just beautiful, and everything was flawless. I have no notes, no complaints. I think that everyone should watch We Were Liars, which is now streaming on Prime Video, season 1. Thank you so much for listening. I'm doing my very best to publish a new episode every Wednesday at 6 a.m. Central. I cannot guarantee that will happen because life happens, and I'm doing this for my own personal enjoyment and growth, and I'm not making money. And since I don't have sponsors that require me to publish, I will randomly disappear for weeks or months at a time. So sorry, but I'm doing my very best. If you want to chat about anything you heard here today, you can contact me at realhonestpod@gmail.com. If you have thoughts on the podcast, constructive criticism, totally welcome. Leave me a review. If you absolutely hate it, maybe just listen to something else. But, whatever you feel. Have a great day. Bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.